That is, I think we're live, y'all.
Good morning, everybody. It is
Good morning.
April 7th. We're a week into April already, 2021, and this is Coffee and Pan Dulce, and we have our host Christian Cano. Is everybody awake?
Good morning.
I've got some with my coffee.
I've got some crazy hair going on, some technical difficulties, so we're running just a little bit of late, little bit of later. I'm sounding like I don't know. That was my Italian accent, Stephen. I don't know. I keep looking at you.
Racially insensitive.
Hey, don't cancel me. Don't cancel me. So.
Sorry. I can't cancel you. You're part of the in group, my friend.
That's, well, I don't know. Well, that's really what our topic is. So today. So welcome everyone. Thank you, Jenny, for filling in for Mom Ruth, an introduction again. And this is Coffee and Pan Dulce. I'm a little frazzled because my big monitor just went out. I don't know if that's an omen, and it's canceled me. Anyway, I don't mean to make light of cancel culture, but I guess we are today. So I'm Christian Cano. Thank you for joining us on Coffee and Pan Dulce. Thank you for those who are watching us on Facebook Live, but also those who are watching us on YouTube and Facebook later. Today is April the 7th. We'll talk about, we start just a little bit late, but we'll talk about current events for the first 15 minutes, and then we'll get into the topic. But before we do, let's go to the Brady Bunch screen. Once again, this is only four of us, including Bernie, St. Bernie. Introduce yourself slowly so I can share us on our social media platforms. And I think it's Stephen and then Jenny. I'm not looking at it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Let's act like that's right.
Right here on my second screen. So
okay.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead,
you, me, St. Bernie, then Jenny.
Okay.
So I'm Stephen D. Fiore. I am the recording secretary for the Libertarian Party of Mecklenburg County, a longtime contributor to Coffee and Pan Dulce, coffee and Beretta enthusiast. Oh wait, wrong side. There you go. Woo! And all around awesome fella. So with that, I kick it over to Jenny.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jenny-Jaymes Gunn. I am a local LGBT advocate involved with Charlotte Pride, the Charlotte Gamers Club, which is a LGBT-based gamers club for board games, tabletop games, and video games. It's basically a social thing. I'm also on the board of directors for the National Organization of Women and a contributor to the LGBT Democrats and several other organizations. Too many to mention. I stay pretty busy. It keeps me out of trouble. But good morning, everybody, and let's get rocking and rolling.
Hey, speaking of gamers, I got a quick question. So I'm a member of a gaming community myself. My particular game is Warhammer 40,000. Have you or anyone in your group heard of it?
I'm sure they have. I am not an expert on all things game. I will just tell you, I lean more towards the tabletop games and the like D&D and things like that. I've vaguely heard that name mentioned before in their conversations. So we have a whole Discord channel, and so I've seen that game actually mentioned. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I've learned more about especially the video game side of it, the what they call the gaming side. I've learned more about that since I joined the organization in the last, I don't know, I've been a member 7 months, 8 months, something like that. And it's interesting. It's a whole world. Like it's very intricate. You can get as deep as you want to go, and you can just barely ever touch a subject. You know, it's pretty amazing actually. But I'm sure they'll know it. I'll ask.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's me and my buddies do it. You know, it's a miniatures painting kind of thing. And one of the cool things about gaming is, you know, people like to do things that are fun. And so folks come over and you hang out and you have friendship and you have a good time. And of course, you can, you know, get bragging rights when you win.
Well, thank y'all for stretching that. So what do they do? Like, what's this like in television? They do this, stretch it, stretch it. So
Yeah.
thank you. I was having a hard time sharing this without little
We're the best at stretching things.
That's right.
That's feeling
That's
so
right.
good.
That's
That's
right.
pretty good Trump, actually.
That
We're the
that
best.
was yeah, that he does a really good Trump. All right. So as we always do in Coffee and Pondusi, let's salute to our neighbors. So if you have your beverage, salute. And also we want to thank Manolo's Bakery, our Pondusi sponsor on Central Avenue. Manolo's Bakery, this is the concha. I've already eaten half of it. And these are actually cookies from Harris Teeter that I really, really like. And so I had to include those in there. And current events, we are Mama Ruthless today. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us today. And also we're Barbara-less today. So there are two individuals that normally would be on our show, and they are not with us today. So we'll have to do them justice. I don't know, current events, what's going on current events? I mean, Matt Gaetz is still in the news. Now he's...
So what's interesting, well, while we're talking about current events, because in the pre-show I mentioned that I've been really busy with work and other things, and just reading, up on some philosophy and stuff, and I haven't been paying attention to the news at all, even the headlines. Like I don't know what's going on outside of, let's say, Charlotte. So I heard that there's some like stirrings, fun things going on in the world, fun things, but I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, well, let's say there's the stuff going on in Georgia that all the Republicans, which was perfect to talk about, our show's kind of going to be about cancel culture. They're like boycotting Coca-Cola.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about that. So why is Coca-Cola being boycotted? Other than the fact that it's inferior to
Pepsi. Jenny, you want to touch it? Well, I don't.
Well, which subject? But we'll start with why Coca-Cola is being canceled by the GQP party. Is they're the QAnon party. They're not even the Republicans anymore. They're definitely they're not the GOP anymore. They've left that. They've lost that title. They are the party of QAnon now. So most of us on the left are now calling it the GQP party because they're not the GOP. Funny. They're not Grand Old Party anymore.
Yeah,
that party's dead. That's the new party's become a terrorist organization. Obviously, trans people are threatening to them too. And people that like to vote. I don't know. It's super pesky. But anyway, Coca-Cola is based in Atlanta, Georgia. And they stepped up along with Delta Airlines and several other major corporations in Georgia and said, we're not okay with this new law, this voting law, that we feel that it's suppressive and wrong. And of course, Republicans have pushed back and said, well, we'll just take all the Coke out of our Coke machines and all of our headquarters and we'll just stomp our feet and take our ball and go home. And Coke's like, we're a worldwide corporation. Like
exactly,
your minuscule fraction of a percent of you not buying our products is not going to affect us. In fact, that might fire us up even more. And I think it's hilarious when Republicans try to do cancel culture.
Yeah,
when they brought it on themselves.
Yeah,
they're
hypocritical.
I mean that voter bill. I mean, all of it's ridiculous, but I think some of the most childish and ridiculous stuff is like you can't bring bottled waters to people standing in line to vote.
That's actually not true. You can only not do that if you're an active campaigner wearing campaign apparel.
That's still ridiculous. What is it? I mean, let's be realistic.
So that's fine. That's you can say that's ridiculous, but I know a little bit about baseball. I know the All-Star game left Atlanta or whatever over something similar, and they went to Colorado. But
they're all
laws. They have the same exact laws that Georgia has, and so
no, they don't.
Is not about.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
Nope. I read it on the internet.
No. So it's interesting. I know a little bit about the law in Georgia because I'm interested
Google it.
About how the franchise is expanding in places. So some of the emergency provisions for COVID, right?
Yeah.
There were emergency provisions. And so George's like, okay, we're going to go back to the status quo. But
Yeah.
some of these things that Democrats and even moderates like, and some Republicans like, we're going to keep in, right? So it's kind of like a net game for expanding franchise. But of course, some of the emergency measures, right, are going away because, of course, there are emergency measures for COVID, right? So there are activists who are saying, "Oh no, things are being taken away." I mean, that's not necessarily true because what's going back to the status quo plus additional things you didn't have before. Now, Georgia maybe doesn't have the best voter laws around, right? They're not even as good in North Carolina in a lot of ways. But a lot of the rules about drop off and pickup sites, who and who can't campaign, bringing food and drink to people, polling stations, those rules are actually very similar to the ones in Colorado that MLB, cited. Now, my personal take on this, and I'm not a guy. I'm just a guy. I'm not a lawyer. I know a lot of big companies have like moral clauses, like moral agreement clauses in their contracts, and so they can, for example, they maybe got a really good deal from Denver. And they said, "Oh no, but we're locked into this contract in Atlanta, right? Like we can't." But they say, "Oh, this new law passed. This is a great excuse." We'll say it's voter disenfranchisement, it's racist, whatever, and then we'll move to the better deal.
But Stephen, I mean,
that's what companies do, man. All companies do that.
I'm gonna jump in there and call a little BS on some of what you just said. I mean, you slide in some pretty sneaky little things, and that's whatever. I mean, to make that accusation to MLB when obviously, no matter whether it was temporary or permanent manipulation of the law, Georgia's had this problem for a while. This isn't something that this law doubled down on a lot of things that were bad practices before 2020. These were issues that went back to when Stacey Abrams ran for governor in 2018. There was, purging of voter lists, things of that nature. There was a lot of issues. I mean, you look at some of these, the one thing, this new voter law, I'm going to call it a voter suppression law, because they didn't address a lot of the problems like urban voting, for example, and these ridiculously long lines that they have. One of the things that they needed to address that they didn't address with this was how to eliminate that. And a lot of the COVID provisions would actually lessen the ability to have to vote in person. So in urban areas, a lot of the COVID provisions were stuff that probably needed to stay on the ballot, that needed to stay in practice. They were good practices. We don't need 8 and 10 and 12-hour long lines. And that's what was happening in Atlanta in 2018 and to somewhat in 2020. And you see this all over the country in urban areas where they don't put in enough voting machines.
But none of these companies are citing the long lines. They're citing some aspects of the voting law. And here's the thing, one of the things that really bugs me about this, because I live in Charlotte, right? So remember when Raleigh were a bunch of a-holes and they passed HB2? And then millions upon millions of dollars worth of international corporate investment came out of Charlotte. Charlotte was a city that passed a non-discrimination ordinance that wanted to respect people's rights. And so when the state government said, we don't respect local control because Republicans are the party of local control, except for when they do something we don't like, then all these big companies, they want a virtue signal. Oh, North Carolina's bad, so we're pulling all of our business out of Charlotte. They can go take a walk. It's not about that. It's about trying to make money and seem virtuous when they're really not. They're just looking for a better deal somewhere else using whatever excuse they can.
Yeah, well, I'm going to interrupt you.
The result is millions of dollars lost to the Black population in Atlanta so that they can go to the mostly white suburb in Denver. What the hell, man?
Well, I don't think, I mean, to be fair, I don't think that any of us here can speak on behalf of the Black population. And so, I think that, and I think that is, and we're going to jump to the topic, because this is really what it's all about, is the cancel culture kind of topic.
Well,
I
I've
mean,
got one other topic to talk
sure.
about before.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jenny.
Once again, the GQP has embarrassed themselves. The hillbilly law Republicans in Arkansas have taken away transgender youth's ability to access medical care. This is criminal. This is why I call them a terrorist organization. I do not consider them a political party anymore. To rip away medical care to minors, no matter what the topic is horrific. The fact that these hillbilly Republicans in Arkansas think that they know better than doctors, screw that noise. These guys, you talk about needing a public flogging, these guys need it. They need it bad. Even the Arkansas governor vetoed it once. Now, the reasons why he vetoed it really were pretty slimy. But the fact is that even the governor recognized that this parts of this law, which all of this law is wrong. Anytime that you're telling a medical community that you know better as a lawmaker than the medical community themselves is disgusting. The fact that if you're a 16-year-old trans girl and you've been presenting and transitioning since you were 6, for example, so you've gone all the way through school as Jenny, and now all of a sudden you're not going to be able to access medical care, including mental health and physical health, that is archaic and stupid and wrong. And it's criminal. It is terrorism 101. And to use that as a political ploy is disgusting. I'm done with the Republicans. I'm done with them as an organization.
Republicans for a long time, let's be honest. I mean, the Republicans are not a party that's for the people. They're for their small, ever shrinking in group. And it's kind of sad because the politicians that they have that are in power are not clever enough to figure out how to massage and change their message to something that people could actually like and respect. And as someone who is not a Republican and not a Democrat, the idea that the Democrats are the party that only seems to be the only party that seems to be able to effectively build coalitions that do stuff kind of worries me, because I don't like them that much either. So, but you guys might think it's fantastic, so that's cool for you.
Okay.
Well,
so
I don't think it's necessarily fantastic, at the expense of transgender children. And I know that's not what you meant, but I think when Democrats are having to fight off these ridiculous attacks, and we're seeing it all over, including we're seeing it in North Carolina right now. It's just ridiculous that they're targeting a very small population. For example, trans girls below 18, they're only going to be 1 out of every 400 students. This is ridiculous. There's just no reason for it. And this is this is 2021. I mean, we there is so much to delve into, which we can't, but it's like the Republican Party is just canceling themselves. They're that dumb.
Well,
they're really that dumb.
Which is a great segue. And thank y'all, being sarcastic here, thank y'all for sticking to our 30-second agreement. So just
I was going to make a retort. I was going to make a retort on you too, Christian, but
I'm trying to, hey, hold on. All right. So, but those are great. This is the exact conversation that we should have and that we're having across America. These conversations, what Stephen is saying and what Jenny is saying as well. And so our topic today is cancel culture. The cancel culture ? Is this the new excuse for racism? And so the reason that I wanted to talk about this, not only because this is the word cancel culture is everyone's, especially the Republicans, have been using this. And so if you Google what is cancel culture, it will give you explanations of what it is. And if you Google is cancel culture bad, you will find all kinds of talking points. If you Google is cancel culture good, it will give you all kinds of people who write essays about it and so forth. But I think, if you look at this with an open mind and you try to look at What is cancel culture? How's it being used? There's a lot of hypocrisy, I think, all the way around. I think we can all kind of agree with that. But I do think that my understanding is cancel culture really started to come around 2015, 2016 is when people started using the term. And then, of course, Trump really bought into it because I think he kind of used it as, if you don't like what he said and you speak and you hold him accountable, it's cancel culture, cancel culture. And it's the same kind of rhetoric like the war on Christmas. It's like an imaginary enemy, war on Christmas, a war on Christmas. But cancel culture has really come into light lately because we have a Democratic president, but also because of the fact that if you start to listen to a lot of the elected officials like Cruz and Graham, and they pick up on these slogans and they just milk the heck out of it because it works for a while. I think mainly they pick it up and run with it because a lot of people don't really understand what it means. All they know is like, stop the steal. What does that really mean? I mean, Republicans aren't the base is not a very educated base. And if you give them a slogan, they love it. They don't really dig. They don't have the time to dig in deep and say, what is cancel culture? What does it mean? And so let's go around and let's try to keep it very briefly. But what do you think about cancel culture? Do you think it's good or bad? I mean, it is. There's so many scenarios. The Major League Baseball is a perfect example. And just to let you know, Stephen, last night, because I had heard about this talking point, anytime I want to know if something may not be true, is I listen to a Republican say it. I mean, I listen to Ted Cruz and them say it, and I go, is that true? And I Google it. And I Google, is the Colorado voting the same as Georgia? And I Googled it and I looked at .org sites, and that's not true. It's a talking point by the Republican Party that they've been using because people don't take the time to see if there's a difference between the Colorado voting laws and the Georgia voting laws. And so when they have been saying, well, the Major League Baseball just moved to Colorado, which has the same voting laws, a lot of people don't take the time to actually see if that's true. And they go, well, that's just crazy. But if you actually look at the Colorado voting laws, where 98% of people get absentee ballots mailed to them, there's no questions asked. Most people vote early voting, vote by mail. So the need for early voting isn't as necessary. Go ahead.
Well, I do want to jump in. They mail out applications. They don't mail out ballots. Just to because people get confused with that. Is that when like last year, voting centers sent out the application, then you have to mail it in and do all the whatever they require to certify that you're registered. And then you receive your ballot because they have to have some kind of verification before they just send out a ballot in the mail.
But I think that's what's so powerful about the word or the term cancel culture is that none of us really truly understand is what's being said is true, and then B, what does it actually mean, cancel culture? So Stephen, we'll start with you because or go ahead, Jenny, or we'll do Stephen, and then let's try to keep it as brief as we can. What does cancel culture mean to you and all that wonderful stuff?
All right, so I'm going to go off on a direction, an explanation that might seem counterintuitive. So for people who may think they know what cancel culture is, so I think cancel culture is just the newest expression of something that's been very, very old and that we've had for a long time. And I'll give you an example. The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker don't treat you with respect because they like you. They do it because they want your money. And if you are the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker that treats your customers like crap, no one's going to come to you, right? People are going to go to other places, right? This is what's called reputational capitalism. It's a kind of a free market thing. And so the internet age is as revolutionary as the printing press. Like, we are living through the Gutenberg Bible period. So when people 500 years from now, when they read about this period of history, it'll be printing press, the internet. It's an incredible thing, and it's really disruptive. And we're trying to figure out how to structure our society and our economies. And people want to do the right thing by and large. And so cancel culture is how we put sort of social pressure in a free market sense to get companies and individuals to do the things we want to do. things that we all agree that are good or bad. Now, sometimes it goes a little too far, right? People get, worked up into an outrage mob over misunderstandings. And so that's a problem. But sometimes it is a way to incentivize the biggest, most powerful players to do the right thing. Like back in the day, it took the Cuyahoga River catching on fire and then the paper company, losing out on sales because the newspapers were printing about, their pollution before they started enacting policies to clean up the river. And then the EPA came in and didn't do anything because the EPA sucks. But nowadays, we as a population, if we see things that we don't like, right, or even if a company says, some things of the past aren't really cool, so we're going to de-emphasize it because we're going to move on, right? We can talk about the Dr. Seuss thing in that sense if you want. Like that's fine. That's moving forward. And some people don't like it because they want things to always stay the way they are. And that's one worldview that I don't necessarily share. But again, one has to be careful because when politicians say they're being canceled, it's not true because they have a platform, right? It's one thing to say, oh, Trump can't be on Twitter. Okay, I guess that's a kind of cancel culture, right? But when you have folks saying, oh, I'm canceled for being a conservative, it's like, yeah, but you can get on the news shows, you can get on Fox News. Now, if you're a guy like me, right, and you don't have access to any of that, and you get canceled, and then I lose my job because of a lie or whatever, that's an example of cancel culture gone too far, attacking the little guy. But almost no one is ever talking about that. And I have an example of that, but again, I don't want to go too far over jumping.
Okay.
And upon those things later.
Excellent. That was good, Stephen. And Jenny, you go next.
Well, and I agree with Stephen. The cancel culture is just it's going by a different name, but we've seen this. We've actually seen this probably come more from the conservative side than the actual progressive side for a long time, where we've had like Franklin Graham and people like that stand up and say they've accused Disney over the years of having a gay agenda. For example, I mean, they've picked out obscure characters in movies and say that Disney's trying to make all of our kids gay. That's been a long running gun battle that's gone actually over 93 years. It's been pretty silly. I mean, the latest was the Franklin Graham protest of the Beauty and the Beast in 2017, whereas one of the minor characters in it, LaFoy, was in love with Gaston, and of course they're both males, and so now there was never a man-on-man kiss. There was never a weird, sex scene in a kid's movie or anything like that. But there was just kind of a little playful song that was just basically expressed to himself, but in a musical way, that he had a crush on Gaston and really didn't understand it. And
Who wouldn't have a crush on Gaston?
I mean, he's a pretty good looking guy. It's like the one they had him play in the live action. He was easy on the eyes for sure, and LaFoy was a pretty cute character. But it millions of conservative grandparents and parents wouldn't take their kids to the movies because of that one little scene in an hour and a half movie. Including, I have an aunt in my family. I'm not going to say her name. She wouldn't take her grandson or I think he was about 10 years old at the time, wouldn't take him because she's very conservative, very religious. And so I'm not going to expose the gay agenda to my kid. Telling my mom this in the same, after I'd already come out for a year, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. He goes to school with gay kids. He personally knows some transgender girls. I mean, he knows the LGBT community. It's not going to phase him. It's only phasing you and getting you all up in a dander. And I think some cancel culture, I agree with Stephen that it does, and this is one of the rare times I'm probably going to agree with him, but I think sometimes it goes a scooch too far. I think some things are much ado about nothing. I think you get into a point where we lose track of what was important and to begin with. We're literally morphs into, why are you mad? and I think we said that all the time during the 4 years of Trump. When he was going off on Twitter, why are you mad?
Yeah.
He was like, why are you melting down? And I don't think he even knew, and with his little Billy Barty sausage fingers typing on his phone, going off about whatever, so it's kind of crazy.
Well, those are really, great examples or explanations of cancel culture. I think the word cancel culture is, if you look at the people who are using the term cancel culture, are complaining about cancel culture, they are people, in my view, that are simply just being held accountable for their actions. And the quote that I had sent out in the email yesterday, I think, was the perfect quote on what cancel culture is. It is holding shitty people accountable for doing shitty things or saying shitty things. Very simple. It's no different than what we have always done in life growing up. It's been around forever. And so I find that there are true victims. I know Stephen had mentioned someone before, the senator from Minnesota, that may have been a victim of where cancel culture kind of went too far. But as a person who has actually been I don't want to call myself a victim, a target of cancel culture. In 2017, when I used the P word against Dan McCready, who was running against me, I was an organized target of our Democratic County Chairperson, Jane Whitley, a person who we fired from our campaign staff, who now works for the Democratic Party. I guess she needed a job. And she works for them. Julie Eisel was one of the persons, a lot of other Dan McCready kind of surrogates, Jeff Jackson, Cal Cunningham, a lot of those individuals, they started really attacking me for saying that. And they use social media. I was being called a homophobe. I was being called a misogynist.
I can't believe you are a homophobe. How does your husband feel about that?
But you know what? On Twitter, no one really knew that I was gay, and they knew that name would stick. And so I was being called all of these things. And I'll be honest. So they really tried to cancel me, tried to make sure that I had no opportunity to run and no chance and to damage my brand. And they were successful in rattling. But at the end of the day, my goal was to keep Dan McCready from being elected. And we did it. And Cal Cunningham, next is Julie Eisel, next is Jeff Jackson. I have an agenda for the next 4 years, and it will work. It's a slow process. But I don't consider myself.
I do have to say, Cal Cunningham did that to himself.
That's right. No, that's true.
His downfall had nothing to do with you. He had a wandering eye.
But it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to see.
Absolutely.
That being attacked. So what I'm saying is, when we were talking about this, and yesterday on NBC, they have a show that goes on about 2 hours. They talk about current events, and they were talking about cancel culture. And one of the hosts said something I thought that was very interesting. What he said was, cancel culture, the public determines whether cancel culture is true or not. If I call Stephen a homophobe, I can call him all I want to. I can start a media campaign, have 10 of my friends on social media, Twitter or whatever, call him a homophobe. If it's not true, it won't stick. It won't create traction. If it's true, it will create traction. The public will say, well, he said homophobic things before. So when someone says something about someone, when someone calls Dan Bishop, who's our congressperson here, a racist, the reason that sticks is because he has had bigoted, he wrote HB2. He's had statements that he's made that seem to buy into that. So something like that will, so to me, cancel culture is just the ability to hold someone accountable. If it's true, it will stick. If it's not, it won't stick. 4 years later, guys, I'm still.
I don't completely agree with that though, because
sometimes things stick if they're not true. Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, for the record, first of all, Stephen DiFiore is not a homophobe.
No, that's true.
We just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
As a member of the LGBT community, he's neither transphobic or homophobic. So let's clear that air really quick.
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
We may not agree on every topic of policy, but I can tell you he is an ally of the community without a shadow of a doubt. I can take that to the bank.
That
So
is
we just want
true.
to be careful
I
about that.
I will go
Just
out
in
on a
case somebody
limb
popped
and
in and
fight
popped
for,
back out
yeah,
and then come back
everyone's
and watch this
individual
later.
rights. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, very much. If we want to use a good example of a homophobe, we can use Dan Bishop. Undoubtedly, is a homophobic, transphobic individual, but proven by his policy. He did it by his own actions. Of course, cancel culture really didn't help, and I think sometimes, and this is where I would counter what you're saying, Christine, is that cancel culture doesn't always work. If you have enough people believe whatever, like the GQP party, for example, that just believes whatever, you could Trump could tell them, jump off a cliff, and I think a lot of them would do it. I think cancel culture is only effective as the audience that you're targeting. So if you're targeting an audience that realizes that there's an injustice that's been done, or something has been said that doesn't sit well with the majority of people that are actually intelligent, I think that it can be effective. It also can, hurt careers and can hurt companies too. I have mixed feelings about targeting a company's, as cringy as it is that some companies donate to certain politicians. I do have, and it does bother me that certain, organizations target the LGBT community, for example, and these large companies are donating to them. I also cringe at the ability to take away a company's right to be able to donate to the candidate of their choice.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this to my own detriment, because there's several companies that donate to many Republican candidates like a Dan Bishop that undoubtedly have targeted and hurt my community specifically. But at the same time, I never want a politician not to be able to raise money. Now how we limit or control fundraising, that's a different deal. Now that's two different subjects.
Yeah.
But as the laws sit right now, I cringe at that part of it, because I think that if we really want to reform politics, and especially to allow the other parties like the Greens and the Libertarians to get on a footing with the Democrats and the Republicans as far as competitiveness, I think campaign finance reform is important. I just don't want to see it done through cancel culture. I want to see it done through legit legislation.
Excellent. So Jenny and Stephen, here's a question. Because really what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing from the people that are using the term cancel are complaining about the term cancel culture. They're also using the term woke. And woke within the Black community, African American community, is a term that is used that they are now woke to racism, bigotry, and it's a term that means they are now awake. They're awakened to what's happening to them. And the same people that are using cancel culture are starting to use that term woke in their statements. They're starting to say the woke society, the woke, as if though it's a bad thing to acknowledge that there's racism and bigotry. And what I'm seeing is there's two types of ways cancel culture is being used. It's being used from an individual who complains because they say something and then people attack them, whether it's a star or a celebrity. That's one way that cancel culture is being used online. And then there's also another way it's being used, like it's currently used, where they're saying Major League Baseball is doing cancel culture because they pulled out of the World All-Star game. And so I can understand the individual use of the word cancel culture, but when they use it against a company, to me, that's just free market. Isn't that just like people using their dispensable income and to decide what they want to do, who they want to support? Isn't that what?
That's exactly it. It's
okay.
The market at work, and it's the market at work in a way that is new and novel. And so a lot of folks don't really know how to put it into their framework yet. So this is an example of the public trying to figure out how to think about this new and different thing. Here's an example of, like, say, cancel culture that isn't. So the Dr. Seuss Society, or I forget what it's called. Anyways, they pull some of the Dr. Seuss books that were written early in his career that, according to them, have racially insensitive imagery. Okay, cool. It's their property. They could say, you know what, we don't think these things add to the culture anymore. They had a good run. We're going to pull them from circulation, whatever. You know, I'm mad I didn't get in on it because I would have bought a whole bunch of copies on the cheap because they're going for like $500 a pop now. So I missed out on that gravy train. Well, whatever. That is not cancel culture. That is a company, you know, deciding with their own property, we're going to focus on other things. And I'll say this, Dr. Seuss himself.
So hey, Stephen, but that's a good, what you just said is a perfect example of that occurred. And there are people in the Trumpism world that are saying that Democrats use cancel culture on Dr. Seuss. And if you didn't know that story, you would think that that occurred because of pressure from people. And what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They looked at it themselves and like, we don't like it. You know, there's a TV show called Scrubs, right? There was an episode of Scrubs that had blackface in it. There was the creator of Scrubs was having a rewatch 10 years later of the episodes and commentary. He saw this episode. He's like, oh yeah, I thought that was funny like 15 years ago, but I don't really like that anymore. So we called up like CBS, whatever company held the broadcasting rights, because he still has creative control over the thing that he made because he's still alive, right? And he goes, hey, can you just pull this from circulation, like new issues to DVD releases? And like, I just want to pull from the catalog. I don't think this is funny anymore. I've grown as a person. I don't think it works. That's fine. Like, that was a decision that he made. You can disagree with it if you want. That's your prerogative. But like, he saw that, he goes, yeah, I don't like it. And let me just talk about the Dr. Seuss thing. Dr. Seuss, early in his career, was a propagandist for the United States Foreign Services Department, right? He was responsible for producing a lot of the racist imagery that was coming out of the government to prop up American hatred of the German and the Russian and the Japanese, right? Then later, after the war, he saw where that led: internment camps, atomic bombs, lingering hatred of certain groups. He was horrified by that, and he wrote Horton Hears a Who, his most popular and famous work, where a person is a person no matter how small, right? This is a really big thing. He changed, right? He went from portraying people as, racist caricatures, because that's what he got paid to do by the U.S. government for a long time, right? That's FDR, by the way. Anyways, and then when he saw the after effects of that, said, ooh, I don't like that at all. He writes something as amazing as Horton Hears a Who that has a really powerful message of people being people because they're individuals, and that, they deserve to be respected no matter what, no matter their arbitrary characteristics. That's a good thing, because people can change over time. And we need to understand that people need breathing room to be able to do that.
That's a good point. Jenny, jump in.
I think you see an evolution of culture, and I think you also see the other side, is Stephen alluded earlier, that you've got part of your society, predominantly conservatives, that want to keep things the same. They want to maintain a 1955 mentality, and I think what we forget is how far we've come. And you are right, Stephen, that people can change, and we saw this with Dr. Seuss over his career, and what he did before and what he does now. You've seen this with people both ways. We've seen some people change for the worse. Who knew how bad Donald Trump was going to be as a human being until he ran for office, and we started peeling back the curtain of the Apprentice show. Mm-hmm. And a certain public image, and his public image from the Apprentice show was not that bad of an image. I'm going to say, I used to watch the show. I didn't think it was that bad. The
show on television.
Yeah, it was because it raised money for children and charities and things like that, and so there was a lot of good. And I didn't really consider him anything more than an entertainer, and then all of a sudden he become this cult leader. Like he switched from from basically Pee Wee Herman to Adolf Hitler in the blink of an eye.
So,
and we saw that he tried to cancel, which was hilarious, how he tried to cancel Obama and the whole birther movement, and ironically accuses the other side, the Democrats, of trying to cancel him. And I'm going, dude, you spent a decade going over and trying to accuse Obama of not being born in the United States and calling him a Muslim and everything else. Like, that's going to cancel you either. And then
Is
you
Hawaii
get mad.
really the United States, though?
What?
Is Hawaii really the United States, though?
Absolutely.
I mean, it was an independent it was an independent country before the sugar companies subverted
all right.
it.
Well, let's
support independence for Hawaii.
Okay, let's circle back to cancel culture. So can we agree, or can we just share that there may be a very big difference between when someone targets an individual or social media, and I think that's really how cancel culture is working now, via social media, right? I mean, back in the day, I guess you held people accountable by just in front of their face and saying at the bar, "You're a dick." I mean,
or a bus boycott. Don't forget things like bus boycotts.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Those are very powerful tools for social change.
Yes, and so now it's
I think
easier.
We've had boycotts forever, though. I mean, we're talking about boycotts, strikes. I mean, the list goes on, and I think also too.
This is a new word
from the newspaper
we've had for a long time.
Yeah,
we've moved from the newspapers and magazines to 24-hour a day access on the internet and the Google machine. And I think humankind, we've not evolved, but our technology's evolved so much that we're still playing catch up. We're still seeing what the ramifications are, and it's going to take a while. I think it's going to take a long while before we catch up to that.
Hey, Jenny, you brought something up that was very, very important. Because I know you have a kind of a pulse on certain generations.
Full stop. Everything I say is important.
No, I mean,
y'all just live in my world. You just revolve around my world. So let's
don't cancel me, girl. All right,
no, I'm the queen.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, Stephen. So hold on a second. So do you think that the term cancel culture is there's a difference obviously in the generations? So for an example, those who are very social media savvy, probably millennials and TikTok teens and Gen Xers and baby boomers probably aren't as sophisticated or don't really understand what's cancel culture and what's just, kind of writing on the bathroom wall kind of stuff. And so I think maybe that the people in certain generations take that term cancel culture way too seriously, because in their generation, cancel culture was someone said something in your face and they take it very serious. It's not done like that anymore. And so when the Republicans use the term cancel culture, they don't care about what the younger people are thinking. They're looking at that voting age between 45 and those demographics who are sitting at home going, "Oh my goodness, this country is you shouldn't be fired because of what you did 25 years ago." That's kind of their term.
The real count, the real deal is we just saw how a political party is making themselves obsolete. The fact that Trump lost by 7 million votes. Obviously Biden's voters skewed younger. I mean, and Trump's typical voter was older and more male and typically white. And so you are seeing a move away from their version of cancel culture. I think what you're saying is different than older people's
That's what I'm saying.
generations, like our generation and up, basically, is that I think it's the older generation's confusion on what cancel culture even is.
Yes.
The fact that we're debating it on this show today or discussing it today, it says we don't completely understand it. But I think the TikTok teens and all them, theirs is, I think they're laughing at us. I think they're looking at the Facebook posts and all that and going, that's why I'm not on Facebook anymore, or I only use Facebook to check for events, because all my friends are younger
And
than
we
me,
can't
and they
gloss
go,
over.
I don't use Facebook
Yeah.
for that very reason, because the older crowd is trying to say they're a cancer culture. Well, they're just
Mhm.
laughing at the older generations
Yeah.
like ourselves.
Yeah.
And these younger generations, these millennials and the baby Zs, are going, we use cancel culture because we do want to see change. We do
Yeah.
want to see effective change, and we're using it right.
Sure.
And quite
But on
frankly,
that
they are the
point,
future.
on the point of them using it right, there is a
Yeah.
pernicious aspect of it that we have to be careful of. So
Mhm.
there's an example of an electrical lineman. These are the guys who work on the power lines, right? So he
Right.
is a Hispanic immigrant who was working for a utility company down in Texas, and it looks like he was flicking a bug off of one of the lines. And while he was flicking a bug, of course, his hand made the OK symbol. Well, some folks on social media, for some strange reason, thinks the OK symbol means some white supremacist, white power kind of thing. And so that got trending on Twitter in the local area. The Twitter mob got outraged. Oh, look at this racist guy flashing the OK symbol. And, next thing he knows, he's being fired because utility, all of a sudden, they see their Twitter mentions blow up in a negative way. And they're like, we don't know what this guy did. We don't
Yeah.
want to deal with it. And so
Yeah.
this is an example of how it can go too far when
Yeah.
utilized against powerless individuals. So it's a tool for
Sure.
social change,
Sure.
but we got to be careful not to, incorporate people into the dragnet who don't
Sure.
deserve it, right? Because it
So-
can hurt
so-
people who don't have power.
Hey, Stephen, that was what you said, and kind of the example you gave was a conversation that we had in this household last week. We were talking about a situation kind of like that, and about someone who was going to get fired or whatever the case may be. And I was reminded of during my years in the hotel business, and I remember my COO telling me, no one gets fired because of other people. Everyone gets fired because of what they are doing or what, I think what he was trying to say is no one just gets fired out of the blue. And companies really only fire someone if they want to fire them. They give an excuse of why they fire them. But most people, and I don't want to say no one, because I'm sure there might be some individuals, but most people get fired because someone wanted to fire them before. They were just looking for an excuse to fire them. And so I'm not necessarily sure that cancel culture is, or when things like that happen, result in as many of those things as possible. It's just possible that people didn't like them at their work and they were just looking for a reason to fire them. And the reason I say that is because a lot of these Republicans who are saying who have been called out, who have been fired from, like the Karens who have been fired, or some of the other individuals that have been fired, because of the Capitol riots, and their companies have fired them. They weren't really fired because of that. Their companies were looking for a reason to fire them, and they went, now we've got something that we can fire this person. And so, I don't know. What do you think about that theory?
I mean,
I don't-
that's the case. So I've seen that happen where I've worked at a job where someone was, the management wanted to get rid of them, but they had to wait for the right time to get rid of them because they weren't a good employee. But I also have firsthand experience of knowing people who were good employees and something completely out of their control occurred, and the company decided to get rid of them because of personality conflicts, where nothing to do with job performance or customer satisfaction or whatever. It's just that, one person didn't like the other person for some reason, and they looked for a reason to get rid of them. And the way businesses are structured, almost especially in North Carolina or in a lot of the southern states that are at will employment, you can be fired for any reason or no reason, as long as
Insubordination.
Reason. yeah and I mean, so you got to be careful, because maybe this lineman was a bad employee, but maybe he wasn't, because look at it from the point of view of the utility. A lot, but people like that are a dime a dozen. You can so if someone's getting you a lot of bad press and you don't want to deal with it as like the management, you just be like, I'm gonna get rid of them, and it's easier that way. So I mean, you're right. It could have been the excuse, like for example, MLB wanting to get out of the, a non-lucrative contract with, Atlanta and wanting to go for a better deal in Denver. I don't begrudge them if they're honest about it, but your businesses are always going to find a reason to do the thing that they want. And remember, it's all about the money. So it's never really about the goodwill.
Jenny, jump in.
Well, as a guy who loves money.
That's mighty cynical of you, Stephen. But the truth is, no matter why the MLB pulled out of Atlanta and moved it to Colorado, the fact is that it does help put pressure on a state that I do think made some drastic errors in their judgment, and it has a bad history of voter suppression and of some very bad ideas. We all saw that unfold, in 2018. So we can say 2020 was an anomaly. We had a worldwide pandemic, all kinds of things were going on, but that wasn't the first time Georgia's had problems with voting issues and voting rights and voting locations. They have a long history, as does Texas.
A problem with voting rights? I don't believe it.
Yeah, especially a southern state. I think no matter what the motivation is of why MLB did it, I think they still did the right thing. Now, did it boost their public image? Absolutely. Did they do it for some virtue signaling and some good PR? Absolutely, because pro baseball's had some bad moments in the last 20 or 30 years too. And so I don't blame them for taking advantage of that. It is part of the market, market forces.
The market will let us know whether it's a good decision or not, because if they made a really bad decision and people stop buying their products, then the company will have to figure out a way to deal with it. And when NASCAR said we're not going to have the Confederate flag anymore, well, we don't think this is going to negatively impact our business model. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. I don't really watch NASCAR. But if it does negatively impact their business model, then they'll have to figure out another way. I think they'll be fine, because people love watching cars take left turns for a couple hours.
Yeah, NASCAR had nothing to lose. Their market share was dropping dramatically. That a lot of people weren't really going to the races. They were taking seats out of the stadiums to do that. And also, with Major League Baseball, we don't really know what was happening behind the scenes. Maybe they did it because to keep a big to-do from happening. Maybe there were players saying, we're not going to go if it is in Atlanta, and they didn't want all of that to occur. So there may have been some pressure behind the scenes. You're
right. The possibilities are endless. That's right. I'm cynical by nature, so I take the cynical tack. But you're right. There might have been something else going on too.
But can we agree, or can we at least agree? Because we've run out of time. We started a little bit late. We ran out of time. Can we at least agree that that's not really cancel culture? It
is.
Baseball,
baseball said we're going to cancel Georgian Republicans, and say we push back.
Sure.
Now, whether it affects their business model or not, we don't know. Sure. Time will tell that. But with any time that you push back, whether you call it cancel culture, whether you call it protesting, whether you call it a boycott, an embargo, whatever it is, they're all kind of the same. They're definitely similar in theory. When you say, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to boycott the Olympic Games. We're not going to go to the Olympics this year because of this and that. I think you like we did in 1980, and the Russians, the Soviet Union did in 1984. We reciprocated the boycott of Olympic Games out of protest of different things. That's cancel culture too. That is a protest, which
is really unfair to the athletes trained so long as well. Right?
Yeah, it was stupid.
That some politicians couldn't get their head out of their butt, and the people that really suffered the consequences were these young athletes who did nothing wrong and only wanted to compete and missed out on their chance.
There was many athletes that was their only shot too, and so the downsides of cancel culture are people getting fired from jobs that may or may not have done what they were accused of, but something called wildfire with the internet. The downside of the internet is that it can put somebody in a bad position so fast they don't have time to recover. So if you have a politician that says something off kilter, or a celebrity or somebody just isn't very mindful of their words in this modern era, or they do a soundbite, it can destroy a career or forever maim it, to where people just look at this person differently. Like that lineman in Texas, for example. We don't know where his heart was.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he was just doing his job. It's a difficult job. A lot of people get killed doing that job.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. And let's not forget,
it's horrific, and I think our society doesn't always give people grace like they should.
Yeah.
I've seen this with Christian, and being an ally, being a friend, being in the same community together, I've seen people talk about him like he's the scourge of the earth, and some of it's true. So some of it is true. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
but sometimes this cancel culture does go too far when you know somebody personally that's been hurt, and I think we all have to remember,
the lesson of Dr.
We have to be
Seuss
careful.
Horton Hears a Who, right?
Yeah.
Well, remember
absolutely.
that lesson. A person is a person, no matter how small.
So this week I was watching Andy Griffith, as I do every day and every night probably, and he told his son, what's his name?
Opie.
He told Opie, never tell someone something that you don't want repeated.
Right.
That was the advice he gave him, and that's the same advice I have for social media or anything. Never say anything. Never post anything that you don't want repeated. And to the people who tried to cancel me back in 2017, I knew exactly what I was doing. I was not going to beat Dan McCready in the primary. I was going to lose big. And I knew I had two options. I could either bow out and not be relevant anymore, or I could challenge him the way from the baloney that I was seeing, and at least have the opportunity to go down fighting. So I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly when all of the hits were coming to me, when I had to was banned from the party, from holding a party position for 2 years. I knew exactly what I was doing. It didn't hurt me personally. I mean, thank you, Jenny, for kind of taking up for me. It doesn't hurt me personally if some people from the LGBTQ people don't like me. I'm 54 years old. I don't care. I mean, it actually increases my cues within another party, because I had so many people who said, thank you for what you did, Christian, And so, like, for me, and I know everyone's different. There are some people.
When I saw you say that comment, I thought that, oh man, yes.
So like
slay,
for
queen, slay.
Well, and I
don't know if the word choice was typically or was very good. But I understand what you meant.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
word choice.
Yeah. No. The word choice was. I wish I had
perfect. The word choice is
24 hours before I actually had said it. But I do think that I wouldn't have made the cover of the Charlotte Observer. I wouldn't have been in a cartoon in the paper. I wouldn't have had Julie Eisel, whose underwear was in a wad, all upset. I wouldn't have been able to bring all of that out unless that had occurred. We wouldn't be talking here. This show started because of that election. And so we would not be, so for me, I have to, as an adult, I have to know exactly what the advice that was given to Opie. Never say anything or never post anything that you don't want out. And there are things that I sit there and I go, should I post that? Should I not post it? And I go, the consequences I'm willing to face. And there are many times where I post things purposely to get a reaction from people. And no one may not even like it, but I know someone's looking at it. And I know in 3 or 4 years, someone's going to ask me about it. If I ever decide to run for office, they're going to say, how dare you call Dan Bishop a racist? And I would be glad to say, well, let's ask him, Dan Bishop, are you a racist? So I'm planting those seeds to damage Dan Bishop's brand 2 years ago. you know? And so I'm just saying is that cancel culture isn't always, I think we have to have personal responsibility for when people try to cancel us. People can't call me something that I'm not if I didn't have a history of it. And there are things, as Jenny has said, there are things that I am. And there are things that I've had to come to grips with. I have a lot of misogynistic tendencies just from the things that I say and the jokes that I make and whatever. And I would never have really known that unless people had started to call those things out. And because of the society now, I now think to myself, should I not use panties in a wad? Is that offensive? Which I was just about to use a while ago. No, I should use the word underwear. Yeah, now I should use the word underwear.
And that does bring us full circle, because just in the story
I've
with
always
Dr.
liked knickers in a
Seuss,
twist myself.
you know, with Dr. Seuss, that is a good one. And with Christian, you know, people can change. People do make mistakes. What the specific word he used, I do consider a mistake. I think there would have been another word like coward or chicken shit or something like that, and would have been just as inflammatory, to call a former Marine a coward and a chicken shit, you know, or a punk or whatever, but wouldn't have disparaged, you know, a group of people, because I think when you use the P word, that is misogynistic. It is something that is offensive to a group of people. I do see why they would be offended by that. I know why you said it. It's a very effective word in a lot of ways, and it. I mean, it re-sparked the Me Too movement, because then the little P word hats were running around, which I'm not a big fan of anyway,
Yeah.
but for a lot of other reasons, because I think it discounts trans women.
Yeah.
But I think in the long haul, when you say things for a reason, you know, it does cause a lot of backlash, but sometimes all press is good press for the most part, and if you get reactions, that means you draw out emotions. And I know in sales, some emotion is better than somebody just sitting there apathetic and looking like I'm talking to a wall.
Yeah, the apathetic customer is less likely to buy than the energetic customer, right?
Correct.
So, and remember, we're in the business as politicians, as social media influencers, whatever, in selling ideas. And you know, bad ideas will get pushed back on, right? Cancel culture. Good
And selling
ideas will be bought
too.
into. Yeah, I mean, so it's all good. Now, Christian, you mentioned earlier something about woke, and
Yes.
this is an interesting thing. Conservatives and liberals, like, you know, progressive type folk, I think they use the same words to mean different things. So, you know, you and I, we might use woke to say like, oh yeah, I understand that, you know, my black friend has a different experience when he gets pulled over by the cops than I do, right? Like, that's a real thing. DWB, driving while black, if you don't know, like, is a real thing in some places, like up in New York. Like, that's not cool, right? And so when you understand that, it's like, oh, that's woke. But let's say you're from, like, say, the South Park boomer conservative camp. When you use woke, you're not necessarily talking about that. You are thinking, probably, again, comments if I'm wrong, guys and gals. You might think that woke is the sort of intersectional type mindset, right? What's called, I think in academia, it's called postmodernism. It's like this idea that every kind of social interaction is just construction, right? That you just kind of make it up, and that you can mold society the way you want. You can mold a person into the form that you want, like so much clay. And you're pushing people into more of a progressive mold. I think they're thinking about that in the social science context, rather than realize that it's a description of the lived experiences of some of your fellow Americans. And so this is an example possibly of two different tribes talking past each other, using the same words with different meanings. Because let's face it, English is weird. We have one sound that means a whole bunch of different things. Example, red. red can mean a couple things. It could be a color. It can mean I actually read something, or I have read it out. Like look
Anger.
at symbols on the screen. Yeah, anchor.
Yeah. Communist.
Saw, see. Yeah,
Republican.
communist. Yeah, or communist and Democrat are kind of
I read
tautology
you.
sometimes. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey.
So, we have gone way over, and I do value everyone's time. And so we probably need to wrap up here, unless y'all want to go a little bit longer. But, that's up to the panelists here. But I want to thank everyone who's joining us now, because people will start to kind of drop off here. And then those who watch us later will say, my goodness, that lasted a long time. But I do want to just piggyback on something that Stephen had said earlier when we first started the show. And I'm just curious on not just what y'all think. What I've always wondered, and I thought about this with HB2, and I think about this all the time with the Republicans in Texas, because that's where I'm from, and Jenny's from, and Mama Ruth is from, and I've thought about that also with just Republicans. Yeah, and Cindy, our friend from Texas as well. One of the problems that Republicans have, like in Georgia, with this, let's say this voter bill, the reason that it's automatically discarded is really valid reasons, if you think about it. The Republican Party is not known for reaching out to those they want to help, like the Black and brown community voters in Georgia, for an example, or North Carolina, the LGBTQ community when they did HB2. If they really were trying to help our community, they would have reached out to us and say, this is a concern we have, bathrooms. And we need to address this issue because it's a big issue. It's bullshit, but it's a big issue. How can we want to do, but we don't want to, we want your input because this may negatively impact you. That's the way you pass legislation. So when HB2 had passed, had it been with the input of the LGBT community, it would have been written completely differently. But the way the Republicans govern, it's like the I'm your daddy plantation type of governing. And it's just a bizarre way of governing. I'm going to tell you what's best for you. And then when I do it, I'm going to say, but this is best for you. What are you complaining about? And it's a really crazy idea that they actually think in 2021 that marginalized communities are just going to sit back and go, yes, the Georgia voting bill was best for me. You did, yes, master, you did what was best for me. It's a crazy concept. And so when they try to, and not to say that that's you, Stephen, but the explanation that they have been given on Mitch McConnell, I heard him say yesterday, the Georgia voting rights bill has been really good for the voters, especially the rural and Black people in Georgia. He's telling Black people that this is good for you. And that's really a crazy, I don't know if it's a generational thing or whatever. So I guess my point is, when the moment they say that, your BS meter should come up and say, this is a shitty bill, because
I will agree with you. When a politician,
Sure.
am I coming in clear, by the way? I had to, my headphones died, so I had to.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So when a politician says, I have a law or a policy and it's in your best interest, you should immediately call bullshit, because maybe they're being honest. Maybe they're being truthful, and that would be the rare occurrence. But more so often, these folks, the people in power, couch a naked paragraph for themselves in the terms of, what is best for them, right? So like the Patriot Act is the least patriotic thing Congress has ever done, right? Just a den of traitors, in my opinion, right? But we're led to believe that this is for your own good, right?
Because it had the word patriot in it.
It has the word patriot in it. Homeland security. It's for the security of the homeland. It's a really good thing, guys, right? So when these politicians say, yeah, this is for your own good, you're right. Your BS meter should go up.
Sure.
And I can't speak to some of the issues in Georgia.
Yep.
I know I would like to see greater expansion of the franchise in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I think it should be easier to vote for more people. We should have more resources and public education on like civics, so people actually know what they're voting for. They know how the system works, and I will say this: the the Board of Elections rather does a really good job of ensuring the security and integrity of the vote in North Carolina. That's how the whole scandal with District 9 was found out, because these are folks who do their due diligence. So I do appreciate that. Right. So, North Carolina is by no means perfect, but it's a lot better than some other places. And that's because the people of North Carolina kind of demand it. Right.
Yeah.
So I do hope that the people who live in Georgia who want better access, are able to, use this moment as a galvanizing force to force the government into doing things that are right. Because essentially, think about this, we think of the government as the people who rule us, right?
Yep.
A lot of us do. But in truth, in this country, we are the governing force. There's this concept called consent of the governed, right? Where we give power to the politicians so that the politicians can do things on our behalf. And if we don't like it as a people, we take it back. Well, we're moving away from that. And, I do hope that in this one venue, people can, at least in Georgia, use it as a galvanizing force to get the change that they want. And, there are always going to be people in power who push against them. But we'll see how it goes.
I don't think the QAnon party believes in consent, obviously, by how Trump has lived his life and how he rules or ruled. And the Republican Party, when they go after voter suppression and trans people in bathrooms and stuff like that, nobody consented to that, and that's why McCrory got fired. That's why we saw an example of cancel culture in 2016 and 2017 with North Carolina. Is even if it affected cities that were basically innocent of this, like Charlotte, for example, this is why we got to be more choosy about the candidates that we put up there, including, I think at this juncture of history in our country, I think there is an opportunity for the Libertarian Party to fill a void, because the Republicans have obviously de-evolved into a hot mess, and I think eventually a third or fourth party is going to be needed. But I do think there's going to have to be a lot of changes. I think especially on the presidential level, I think you're going to have to see some huge changes with the Electoral College, things of that nature. But I think when we push back against these horrific bills, these that become law, like the bathroom bill, I remember in Texas when I went and actually spoke at the Texas Senate, and the Republicans on the panel, which were the majority of them, there was only one Democrat allowed on that Senate panel. They could care less what my side said. They couldn't give a damn. In fact, anybody that was an expert, like the president of the Texas Chamber of Commerce, for example, they basically shouted him down. He was against the bathroom bill, or as they called it, the women's privacy bill, and just tried to eviscerate him and discredit him. And that was the president of the Texas Chamber of Commerce. I'm like, how far as a party are you willing to go to destroy people? And I think that's why you're seeing a pushback, like the reinvigorated Me Too movement. By the way, it started in 2006 on a MySpace post. So it was very interesting. It was a woman of color. In fact, I Googled it, but I think the 2017 women's movement and the LGBT movement has pushed back against a lot of this, and it's been good for our movements in certain ways, because we were able to get tables on the issues on the table. And I think the downside is that we are becoming a very aggressive social media culture. How do we go from here? where, like Stephen said, when is it too far? When is it goes from cancel culture to being a cancerous issue, to where we have knives out all the time.
That's all about what societies do.
Yeah. Well,
push and take, the free market thing,
Well,
and we will figure it out along.
Yeah. Well,
like talking about Me Too, it started in 2006 in MySpace, Ronna Burke, as you said, but it got shot in the arm in 2015 when Italian actress, what was it, Ambra Gutierrez, I think, Weinstein, and then it went from there.
Yeah. So we probably need to wrap up here, but I do agree with Stephen that we're and Jenny that we're in this. I think probably since 2009. I don't know when historians will point at the exact point, but I think we're in this very unique. We're trying to find out. It's a generational thing. Baby boomers are trying to find out social media. They have no idea really about social media. They believe so that Facebook is like the newspaper. If someone put something in Facebook, it must be true because someone said it. It's not. It was used for propaganda. Kids left it in 2009, joined Instagram, now join TikTok and other. That's like the warning sign that the people who were in Facebook in 2009 are looking back, going, "You guys still are on that platform," but politicians use it because the demographic that is looking at this. Whenever I see our shows, like for an example, last week we had almost 3,000 touches, 1.9 thousand viewers of our show. When I look at the breakdown, the demographics, it's usually people between 55 and 66. It spikes, and then there's men, and then women, and then the kids are way down here. Like for 3 seconds, they'll watch the show, and so you can tell just there's a difference in how people view it. And I do think that as we look at this, and politicians, and I will give them credit, Republicans have a lot of really bitchy heterosexual queens running their social media. They're like these little white queens, conservative queens, like Dan Bishop. You can tell Dan Bishop's social media person is like this little heterosexual, pro-life queen who's just catty as shit and going, I'm gonna post this. The other day, someone, I think Phil Berger, tweeted something, and then the next day from the congressional Twitter feed of Dan Bishop, he put fierce. That is like the gayest thing, and so Dan Bishop is not that hip, but he's hired someone who's trying to come across as like a really hip, fierce kind of person. But that's not unusual. Republicans generally have closet case people that work on their staff. That's just what they do. If you live in DC, they're all Republican operatives, and they're all, oh girl, this, and they're Republicans, and they work for these heterosexual men who like these boys around who are big queens. And that's not unusual for us to see.
Just to give people credit for starting a movement, I wanted to quote the lady's name that started the Me Too movement. It's Tarana Burke, and she did it because it's empowerment through empathy among women of color who have been sexually abused, is why she coined the phrase Me Too. She was in a response to another post, and she said, well, that happened to me too. And then that kind of generated a movement in 2006. And then, of course, it got revived in 2017 with the Women's March and all that. But its origin story is with Tarana Burke and women of color.
So what I was going to say is that I do give Republicans credit, and Trump really emphasized it. Somehow they have come together and they have said, we're going to say the craziest, baloneyest thing on social media because we know it's not true. But there's a certain part of our base that likes it because it's amusement for them. And that's why they always say, that's not really what he meant. That's not really what he says. And when you ask a really Trump supporter or like a Republican on social media, I think sometimes they're laughing at Democrats because we take things so seriously. And they're going like, watch this. the squad is this, and we go, oh my God, how dare you say that, to us? And I think we have to kind of like hire people like them and just use social media the way they use it, because they really use it like they're teenage girls writing social media. We use it like we have to be professors of grammar and this. They know that it shouldn't be taken seriously, but we do take it seriously. And I do think that there's a difference.
But also too, that tactic backfired in 2020. Trump fired his own butt. Like at the end of the day, we won the Senate, we won the presidency, we kept the House. The proof is in the pudding. It may not work. That kind of retort personality, it may work for a while, but is it sustainable? If you look at Biden's campaign versus Trump's campaign, and Trump was doing all these in-person super spreader events like Tulsa and all that, and Biden went completely remote and completely responsible. And even the media, even the progressive side of the media said, oh my gosh, he may lose with that tactic. Even some Democrats were complaining, he won by 7 million votes. He won by 7 million votes. Now you can say Trump's response to the pandemic may be part of why he got fired. I have no doubt, but I think part of it is the United States also doesn't get a lot of Americans just got tired of it and tired of this ticky-tack stuff. And I think it backfires.
Well, Jenny, that's kind of what I was going with that. I obviously didn't verbalize it correctly. What I'm trying to say is that it backfires when someone calls it out they're running against. So Biden was the opposite. He said, "Shut up, man." He made America realize he's a fool. That Trump was a fool. And so, for example, with candidates like Republicans, like Dan Bishop, the Florida candidate Gates, and all these other districts, the Democrats that run against them don't call it out. They don't say this guy's a fool. They try to run really nice. They try to be very polite, and the Republicans laughing because they're going. They're just like, you're exactly what I want to run against. And so my point is that when Dan Bishop, and I'm specifically talking about him because of what he's been posting lately, I just go look at his feeds for the last month. It really looks like a bitchy teenage girl is writing these feeds. And apparently he has made the decision, and the congressional page and his campaign page, he has made the decision that I need to be as crazy as possible to keep people interested in me as possible, because the Democrats aren't going to field someone who's interesting. They're going to field someone who's boring, who's not going to be challenging. The people who live in the rural areas who don't really follow social media don't even know this is going on. All they know is that their friends are talking about, oh yeah, Dan Bishop, so forth.
But what's exciting about Biden? So the only problem with your theory is the, I think normal or typical candidates can win if they run on the issues they're winning issues. So Biden said, we're going to invest in the infrastructure, we're going to do this and this, and people were looking for that message. And I think an issues-driven campaign can beat a loudmouth bag of hot gas like a Trump, like a Bishop, that's all talk and no help. I think you can win, but you got to sell your story, and that's why Hillary didn't do as good, is because she did not sell her own brand. We don't even really know what her brand was. And whereas with Biden, we knew what his brand was. We know what he is. And you can see in the first 60, 70 days, for the most part, he has rolled out the things he said he was going to do. And so, then some.
Yeah, but that's
so
why.
I think you do have to stick to your guns. I think you do need to retort when necessary. I do think you need to punch back when necessary. But if you spend your whole campaign planning on defense and just punching back at what they're saying, then you're dictating that pace. I think that is wrong. I think you got to be your own self, and you got to have a sense of yourself. And I think that is why the Republicans of won District 9 so much, as the candidates they run had a good sense of themselves. The Democrats, McCready, and to a certain extent, even Wallace, shirked a lot of the issues.
Mhm.
They went around a lot of the issues that are core Democratic issues and
Mhm.
didn't defend a lot of them.
Yep.
When Harris and Bishop attacked
Mhm.
those issues, they didn't defend these issues. They're afraid to
Yep.
defend the rural voter.
Exactly.
I'm like, no, the rural voters have a lot of the same interests that
Yes.
the urban voters have, which is healthcare. You
Mhm.
know, we can go down all the
Yep.
lists.
Yep.
And I think if you tiptoe around the issue and say, no, I stand on this issue.
Yep.
If you want to call me a socialist, great. I will live with
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's a certain percentage of the public that's asking for this.
But
So market forces are asking for those.
Jenny, you're exactly right. We want to get Stephen in here because we really need to wrap up. We've gone way over. But you're exactly right. I think
over.
I think where I was trying to go with that was that Dan Bishop is a perfect example of a person who's promoting this cancel culture hysteria. If you look at his postings, he's a big Trump guy. He's like just in love with, or is still in love with Trump. And he's pushing this Trump thing because it's worked for him, or it has been worked for him. And he's been pushing this cancel culture because he says the most obnoxious, real crazy, racist, homophobic stuff. And then when people call him Bathroom Dan, he says, cancel culture. I'm using free speech in this. And people really haven't challenged people like him in calling, baloney, and so he's the perfect example of the Republican Trump type of individual that's using this cancel culture that seems to be working because people are saying, you're right, they're trying to shut you up, Dan Bishop. No, people aren't trying to shut Dan Bishop. No one can shut Dan Bishop up. He's got a really big mouth. You can't shut him up. What we are trying to do is just let you see what he's saying, and then you make the decision if he's congressional or if he's just obnoxious. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is that Democrats have not really showed people, had Cynthia Wallace, or even with all the money Dan McCready raised, had just a fraction of his money been commercials saying, this is the real Dan Bishop, HB2, and talked about what he's posted about, and average people would have seen the commercial going, what an idiot. This guy is crazy. Because when you see Dan Bishop in person, we've all seen him in person, he's a very good actor. He comes across as, well, kind of like a good old boy. I don't really know what's going on. He's a really sneaky bitch. I mean, in the background, he's really a sneaky, like hateful individual. And he plays this like kind of this person, but politically, he will do anything he needs to do to win an election. And
I thought you were going to let Steve talk.
Oh, go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Speaking of 30 seconds.
No, that's fine. I keep talking about the sneaky bitch. That's funny to me.
So this is obviously turned in from coffee Dulce to two queers in a truck kind of conversation. So if you've stayed on this long,
this literally been two shows in one.
That's right.
Be evolved from. It's kind of gone full circle, and it started with the technology snafu because we started late, and it's just de-evolved.
So actually, I do have one thought on cancel culture from a conservative perspective. So the one conservative who may be watching, or people who want to kind of get an idea of a conservative viewpoint. So there a while back, there's a show on Disney Plus called The Mandalorian, which is a science fiction sort of space opera Western type show that takes place in the Star Wars universe. And so one of the actresses on that show, a woman by the name of Gina Carano, I think, she made a comment on Twitter. And, if anyone else had made this, and actually several big Hollywood personalities had made comparable posts in the past on Twitter. But she made this post. It was a call for unity, right? Essentially, or a call for division, depending on your political point of view. And she was effectively canceled, fired from the show for that. Again, I'm really mad because I didn't buy the action figure for her character, so I missed out on that gravy train too, because now they're going for $500 a pop. gosh darn it, I always miss this stuff. In any event, so again, some conservatives are like, oh, this is hypocrisy. Only conservatives in Hollywood are held to a higher standard. Liberals can say whatever they want and they never get canceled. All right, whatever. There's a double standard in Hollywood. We all know that. We all accept it. It is what it is. Now, is this an example of cancel culture? And I would argue that it's not, because yes, she was fired from the show. Okay, whatever. I like the show. I like the character that she played, whatever. But she has an opportunity still to continue to act because she essentially signed on with another network to produce, independent movies. As an organization, they want to be like the conservative Hollywood, whatever that's supposed to mean. But so she still has an opportunity to apply her trade and act and do what she loves. So this is not an example of someone being canceled. Sure, it's an example of maybe a cultural double standard in Hollywood or whatever, or maybe corporate executives making a bad decision or whatever. Like, that's a different story. But it's not technically cancel culture because this actress isn't canceled because she can do what she wants to do, act. So like that's a good, right?
Yeah.
Where we have the ability to choose our associations,
To
whether
pivot,
you want
as-
to be associated or,
as
or
Jenny
whatnot.
says.
Yeah.
So I have a very strong feeling that like in a year, some HR director for that studio is going to leak. We were really trying to fire her for a long time. She was such a pain in the behind to work with. And this gave us the opportunity to finally fire her.
Wow, a Hollywood actor or actress being a diva. Like that never happened.
Because if she was really valuable, the statement would have come out and said, she would have made a statement that said something like, this is a learning, teaching moment for me. What I said was inappropriate. What I said was wrong. And so I do think that had the studio really wanted to keep her, they would have helped. If she really wanted to stay too, I agree with you. I don't think that's cancel culture because I think that people, I don't know, that's kind of my.
I mean,
so we
like a conservative criticism of like say Hollywood is that there is a liberal monoculture, and there are people who are in that industry who will say, yeah, it's a political monoculture. You have to be like left of center at the very least. You can't be an out Republican, you can't be a conservative and get work in Hollywood. That's a problem for the Hollywood people to figure out, right? It's not your problem, it's not my problem. It is what it is. As long as good movies are made, for me to be entertained, that's all that matters. Actors and actresses are just people to entertain me. I pay them money and they say things on screen that I like to listen to.
So in
the case of Gina, just to clarify, so she wasn't just calling for unity, but she actually also tweeted that she mocked mask wearing.
Yes.
And she accused Democrats of voter fraud as well during the 2020 election. So there was a lot of other. She's been having issues since about 2019.
Yeah, she's just a
with
in Hollywood.
Yeah,
like, that's the problem. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was cooking for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah,
she
expresses milk toast conservative viewpoints on social media. Big deal. Like a lot of people have those opinions, except again, this isn't cancel culture. This is a political monoculture in an industry. Like, and it's just a thing, and that's for that industry to figure out. And I love free markets. Markets will work themselves out. A competitor may come up, or people may realize they've gone too far. There's always going to be correction and overcorrection.
Well, and I also think too, from an optics standpoint, especially with Disney and Lucasfilms, they didn't really want somebody spouting off QAnon conspiracy theories, making fun of masks and things like that.
She didn't do that though. Don't spread.
Yes, she did. I got it right here, babe.
What'd she say?
She actually mocked mask wearing.
Okay, that's not QAnon. That's a conservative viewpoint.
Well, I don't know if that's
conservative.
QAnon's been pushing back against that too.
Yeah.
I mean, QAnon is been pushing all the Chinese virus things and all the.
So two different groups of people can have the same idea.
No.
I mean, people who want safe spaces for blacks only on campuses have the same viewpoint as white supremacists. That doesn't mean they're equivalent. It just means that on one weird issue, things happen to align in a strange way. So you can't immune one group of people because they have one idea overlap somewhere along the lines. That's just a coincidence.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that because that is a crock. I mean, there's no QAnon Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're just
clearly,
Russiagate conspiracy theorists.
Right.
Russiagate conspiracy theory is QAnon for the left.
Yeah.
It's just the conspiracy theory you buy into.
Okay. So if you're still with us, or if you're watching this later and you want to know what we talked about this late, this is the conversations that we normally have on not on the show. And these are the conversations that we normally have off camera, except when the cameras are off on Facebook and YouTube. So you're getting a special treat of what we really talk about normally.
And for the viewers, I want you to know that while Christian, Jenny, and I maybe have vastly different opinions on certain things, we can disagree with each other and hear each other's point of view without imbuing, the character of the other person. Well, okay. I mean, I'm a libertarian, so my character is super low, right? But anyway. We can hear each other's points of view and be like, yeah, okay, I disagree. I call BS, whatever, and it's all cool.
Okay, so
I think you look good in a tinfoil hat, by the way, Stephen. I
mean, listen, tinfoil hat is a great fashion accessory, and it keeps the CIA radio mind reading beings away from
it. All right. So we're
good point. Good point.
We're going to end because some of us have to make lunch. Let me just ask you and then answer in 30 seconds, because that was really kind of why we wanted to do the show. Do you think that cancel culture it is really being used a lot by racists as an excuse to be racist? It's like their latest excuse. Before it was like, a Confederate flag is my Southern heritage. It was kind of an excuse to kind of have a Confederate flag to say it was, because it's not really Southern heritage. I mean, it was just their kind of like their reason, most people. And so do you think that when things that are said that are not appropriate, that when people call people out, they're automatically jumping to cancel? What do you think?
So that was a 2-minute question that needs a 30-second answer. Great.
All right, 45 seconds.
30 seconds or less. 30 seconds or less for me. I think that people who are racist, if they want to use cancel culture to back up their claims, they will. People that are not racist, if they want to use cancel culture to back up their claims, they will. The cool thing about cancel culture is it's kind of amorphous. So you can turn it into whatever you want. So you have to be careful. Just because someone is complaining about cancel culture doesn't mean they are or they aren't racist or conservative or woke or whatever. Take the claim at its face value and look into it. And if it bears out, it bears out. But remember, people will use whatever excuse they want. Christian, to your example, they were just a bad employee and we were looking for an excuse. People will use it. So, it's not always one or the other.
Well, and I agree with that. I think pretty dang close. It's a Stephen 30 seconds. But I think people, no, not at all. Actually, you do have a lot of words and a lot of fancy words too.
All the words.
They're hard.
My words.
The best words. But I do believe that that is with anything. I'm sitting here laughing instead of talking. I believe that the cancel culture has always been around. I think there's always been. I think you could substitute protest, embargo. Like I said earlier, I just think that cancel culture is the new flavor of the day word to describe something that people have always done. And I think that we always will. There's always going to be some people that are going to be upset about something. It doesn't diminish their message, It's just that when people get upset about something, it's easier to trigger a large group of people with social media. So I think that's one of the reasons that some people are trying to maybe pump the brakes a little bit about cancel culture, even though I don't think we can. I think with the access, the 24-hour access that you have to shape the media now the way it is, that's just where we're at. It's just where we're at, and it is an upside and a downside of 21st century technology.
So
And,
this is what I find wonderful, and in many ways, COVID and its unfortunate being has allowed us to do things like this, like Zoom. You know, we wouldn't be doing this show Zoom had COVID not happened. We'd still be around this table doing these kind of things. One of the things I think that it is, and Jenny had said this for a long time in the early days and also all the way, that we've had to pivot. Politically, we've all had to pivot in certain ways to get messages out. Republicans have always done a really good job, especially in North Carolina, of planting seeds early on for the next election, whether it's transgender bills. They've been planting seeds to see, is that going to stick so we can run on that issue in 2020 or 2022? School openings, they were planting those seeds right after Biden won. School openings. Cancel culture was one of there are three things that they've been planting seeds on. Transgender bills, school openings, opening it wide up, and cancel culture. The transgender bill is probably not, I mean, it's very hurtful, but I don't think the majority of Americans think that is something that is, because we just know so much more people that we know it's just a hate bill. The school openings, schools are opening a lot quicker. The Democratic governors are opening them up too quick for them. And so as a result of that, that's something that's not going to stick in 20. People have very short-term memories. They're not going to remember some of the things that, let's say, Cooper did, so to speak. But the cancel culture thing was one of the things I think that they thought was going to stick in 2022. So the more we talk about it, and we're able to talk about it more because of Zoom and because of social media, the more we talk about it, the more it educates other people. So it's a less effective tool. That is the only thing. There were only three things that they thought they could win on, unless something dramatically happens, you know, like guns or something differently. And so I think it's really important that we continue to talk about cancel culture, because we're doing it early now instead of doing it this time in 2022, where by that time it's so late you can't impact the election. And so I do thank us for talking about this conversation, because it's taking that topic away from their strategy, and we're able to educate people. But not only that, the more that people talk about cancel culture, the more people get tired of it. And that's, to me, that is what's amazing about being able to do Zoom and this wonderful thing. And so I want to thank y'all for talking about this, because it is really, I hope is educating people, but also I do hope it's taking the steam out of their ability to use this. They're still going to use it. Trump, that's his thing, cancel culture, you know, the fake media, that, you know, free speech, all these wonderful things. And so I don't know, what do you guys think about that? I mean, do you think that in 30 seconds, because we do really have to close. So.
well, I would just jump in and say,
more conversation. So let's go for it. Talk all the way.
I do have a 6 o'clock thing I have to go to, so we have to wrap it up by then. But anyway, we politically, you know, at least from being, you know, in politics off and on for a while, I think, you know, they still talk about political correctness movement, and you know that got coined in the 1990s, and you know. Conservatives won't let anything go. They'll be talking about this for years, long past the TikTok teens being in their 30s. And I think eventually people are just going to go, that's just who they are. That's the, you know, they're the Archie Bunkers of their generation, and they're just stuck in a certain era, and they can't move on. You know, so it is what it is. I don't think it's going to change who they are, and who, if you've been this way for 65 years, I think there's some people that just don't want to change and they don't want to evolve, and that's okay too. It is what it is.
Good,
And we
good
have
explanation.
freedom of association, right? So, I'm a big fan of PC culture because who wants to own a Mac? And we can choose to
Hey,
associate the right groups.
I've
that
got an
are-
iPad.
I'm playing. I'm kidding.
Go ahead, Stephen.
No,
I don't know. You want to add anything or just
no. That's perfect.
Okay.
Like, yeah. I mean, some people don't want to change, and what can
Yeah.
we do? But associate with people who are going to be beneficial and value added to our communities.
Yeah.
I don't hang out with people I don't like. I don't hang out with hateful folk, racists, things of that
Yeah.
nature, because I don't think they contribute to my life at all. So
well, I no, I
freedom of
agree.
association is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think that it has, everything is kind of pros and cons. With the ability of social media, the pros are the GOP are people who have messages, can test those messages a lot quicker. They can post something and test it to see how well it's doing, to see if they want to run with that message. And then if it's border kids this week, if it's guns or whatever, they're really good about like testing those messages to see if they're going to work. And I do think that one of the also good things is we also have the ability to counter that message and try to halt that message or explain that message before it gains traction. I do think we were a little bit late on cancel culture. He was using this since 2017. It was being used not as predominantly now because they don't have him talking about it. But I do think that now that we are talking about this, we can educate people. What's cancel culture? What's just free market? Or as Stephen said a couple of weeks ago, what I thought was brilliant, cancel culture, I think maybe I'm paraphrasing you, Stephen. You said or something about, to the extent was, cancel culture is good when it's someone who doesn't have power that's doing it to someone with power, or you said something to that extent.
You're holding power accountable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
It's good when you're holding power accountable. That's a good thing. That's a tool for the masses, for the people to be able to collectively bargain, if you will, with the people who hold power over us. Like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If it goes in the opposite direction, that's a bad thing. That's the powerful abusing the powerless. But when it goes for those at the bottom toward the top, yeah, man, I'm all about it.
Yeah. And Jenny, you want to say anything before we really wrap up here?
Well, and I think cancel culture or any kind of protest can be the cornerstone of democracy. I mean, that's democracy in action when people are saying this isn't right, this policy is wrong, whether it was Flint, Michigan's water problem or anything like that, pointing out an injustice or a harmful event and trying to put it on the table to be discussed. I think the arena of ideas needs all points of view, especially about debatable things. And some things probably shouldn't be discussed, like transgender kids being able to go to the doctor. I don't think that anybody's for that except for a handful of hillbilly Republicans. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of things like taxation, socialism versus capitalism, that sort of thing. Those have to be discussed on both sides, and that's how democracies work. And
Jenny, I have a question.
Each other, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Jenny,
100%.
Yeah. Hey, Jenny, I have a question, and I know we said we need to wrap it up, but this is something that's been driving me crazy. I'm wondering, many times, and you and I have had these conversations. I try to put myself in their shoes. What are they thinking? How can you espouse so much hate, or how can you write a hate bill, or how can you do these things? I mean, surely they have family members or the case may be. And the only thing that I can think of, the only explanation, unless they actually sit down with us and tell us why they do it, the only thing I can think of is someone like Dan Bishop. When he wrote HB2, he weighed his pros and cons, and I'm sure he knew he was going to get, hate stuff. And then when he was started to be called Bathroom Dan, because he was House member, remember, then he ran for state Senate, and then he won state Senate. And that's when he wrote the bill. He actually wrote it as a House member, but then he won he actually won the state Senate being proud that he wrote that bill. And so what's happening is the LGBT community started calling him Bathroom Dan back then when HB2 passed, and he hated that. He hated that, and he was being called that. And then, of course, it got overturned, and he tried to distance himself, saying that happened. He would get really mad when people brought it up. So if y'all remember when he was running, and Jenny, you were with us, I think, when we went to the debate, and Matthew Wright and Howard, they were all there, and someone asked him about the bathroom bill, and he got kind of really upset that Republicans were asking him, "Is this going to hurt you?" And he said, "That is something that, he kind of like hated, that being asked of him."
I mean, that's just, I think that's a human response. I mean, I think he just didn't want to be accountable for the horrific hate bill that he created and that he authored and promoted for a long time. Like him and McCrory both went into the, to the press and like, really, this could be good for North Carolina, and so on and so on. And really hung his brand to that. And it's not the first time he did something against the LGBT community.
No, I mean, he has a history. He has a history of that.
And so then how do you distance yourself or divorce yourself from that ideology of anti-LGBT hate? Just kind of like Governor Wallace, in Alabama, he'll forever be tagged as a racist. And the things that he said, the things that he did when he was the governor, and so it's going to be one of those things. It wasn't just something he just flippantly said, but it was actual actions that he did. And can he divorce himself from that? Well, obviously, the cancel culture people, the people like myself that are against his kind of ideology, are just going to keep reminding the public, "Oh, this guy's the same guy who wrote the bathroom bill, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We're not going to let it go."
Okay, so
keep somebody like that from winning.
For that.
So where I was going with that was that the Republicans started asking those questions in that debate about, do you think this is going to hinder you? And he got really upset and said, that's something that's passed, because they were actually, the people who are running against him were going to be running on that he wrote HB2. And that was really their argument against him. So when he won, and then he ran against Dan McCready, that was his person. And then also Cynthia Wallace as well. We have to hold her accountable as well. They didn't even mention anything about HB2, Bathroom Dan. And so his calculation had to have been, if I can just get past this primary, the Democrats are not savvy enough to call me a homophobe like the LGBT community are. They're going to run really nice. And so that must be his calculation. His calculation is, I can do these things because I know when I run for office, they're not going to call me out. They're just going to have other people call me out. And so that's the only thing I can think of, is that the reason that he is empowered to do that is because the people who have ran against him haven't brought it up. Dan McCready never said anything about HB2 or Bathroom Dan or anything like that. Cynthia Wallace mentioned it one time in her early fundraising email about Dan Bishop is the author of HB2. Had Cynthia Wallace been sending stuff out, reminding people, this is the crazy homophobic guy. And so I'm wondering if you think that the reason that these individuals like Dan Bishop, because that's the person that I've been talking about a lot, the reason they're empowered to do it is because they're not challenged. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, essentially.
Or Stephen?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, the politicians get away with whatever they can get away with. And sometimes politicians respond to a system of incentives. Remember, your politicians are cowards, all of them, right? They always go with the flow, right? So, even gay rights. Gay rights was something that no president, Democrat or Republican, was for until the overwhelming culture was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then it's like, okay, now that everyone else thinks it's cool, I'll change my stance, right? Like this is just something they're a lagging indicator of what society is cool with, and it's going to take the wider public holding these folks accountable and putting pressure on them to get them to be a contemporary expression of where the culture is. And there's some weaknesses in the party structure too. There's Democrats, they have their reasons why they didn't bring it up, right? That's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
There are strategies, there are ways in which it was brought up in the Republican primaries, but ways that it also wasn't brought up, which again is another show to talk about, because there are a series of incentives within party structures to talk about certain things in certain ways. And the internet, though, is a tool that we can use to talk about these things and get it out to the public and have a broader conversation than what those in power maybe want. And that's a good thing. That's the democratization of public discourse, which is a good thing. It's free speech. We're free to talk, discuss these ideas, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And to speak to your original question, which is what would a person like Dan Bishop be thinking when they do something like this? I think is if they're gonna go, I'm gonna ride this horse as long as I can, and if I can get away with it, I'm gonna get away with it because I know it'll put me in office, or it'll get me that job. I mean, and there's been a lot of actors and actresses that didn't speak French, but it's a French speaking role, and they go, oh yeah, sure, I speak French, and then 6 months before the movie's actually going to film, they take tremendous amounts of tutorials in French, and I think, and I'm not defending Dan Bishop by any means, I think he did what he needed to do to win the office. I think that most of his strategies are very smart and savvy. He's a savvy human being. He's not a good old boy. He's a cruel person. He's an evil person to attack the transgender community. But not all politicians target the transgender community. Yeah. I mean, neither one of you do.
Are snakes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't trust any of them, but that's why I don't run for office. But the reality is
that do, right?
But I think as politicians are salespeople, they're going to put their best foot forward. They're going to do what they can to get the sale or get the office, and it's what they need to do. And whether it gets them in the office or not is decided at the ballot box. People are going to buy into Dan Bishop isn't that bad of a guy. He's a Trumpster. We like Trump. We're going to vote for him. Or we whoever is running for office, whether it's Vi Lyles, whether it's Governor Cooper, no matter who, you have to buy what they're selling. And he obviously enough people in District 9 bought what he was selling and didn't want to buy the other brand, and it is what it is, and I don't fault a politician for doing that. I don't blame Dan Bishop for running his campaign that way. I hold him accountable for the whole HB2 thing, but that's two different issues, and I think he did there's nothing inherently evil about saying, well, that was in the past. He's not wrong. It is in the past. It is over. It was thrown out in court. So he's not lying. He's just doing what he needs to do to win and win the Republican primary and go on and beat a Democrat. And
and thank you for that. Thank you for that kind of like that kind of feedback or whatever, because like I said, I always I do try, believe it or not. I think most of us all here do. And I think everyone, Barbara does the same thing. I know Mama Ruth does the same thing. We do try to always keep part of our heart and mind open to, even though the GOP party has become crazy and even crazier, there's still part of us that still has hope that maybe they will whatever. And so
one day, hopefully we see more of the Kyle Kirby's, the Matthew Ridenhouers, the people that are more moderate and tempered in their views and a little bit more of the voice of reason, even though they're the minority of the party right now. They don't have the power right now. Maybe someday a Eisenhower type Republican Party will come back to us, maybe after they're totally crushed in the next few elections. Who knows? But
So if you have stayed on this long,
yeah, we're 2 hours in.
You're going to hear 2 scoops, and then we have to close. So we'll see who actually has stayed on this long, and because someone will. 2 scoops. Matthew Ridenhour has switched to an independent. He's going to be running for office. We don't know what office, as an unaffiliated. It's either Congress or we don't know yet. He hasn't declared it yet. But we do know that he has switched to unaffiliated. He's left the Republican Party, and we don't know exactly what he's going to run as, but it's a brilliant thing because the Republican brand is very damaging. Oh, did we lose? Did we lose? I think we lost Stephen.
We did.
Yeah.
We've run too long when one of the co-hosts jumped off.
Exactly.
I think this is connection.
I think also so that's the first thing. If you stayed this long, you will know that. The second thing is, if, gosh forbid, Jeff Jackson gets the nomination, which I'm hoping he won't, but let's just assume everyone has the opportunity to get the nomination. I mean, quite honestly, if he gets the nomination, the main reason he will lose the general election is because they have something on him that they had like Dan McCready, not Kyle Cunningham, something on him. Dan McCready, if you remember, when they ran for Dan McCready, they called him Greedy McCready. Remember, they pulled out all the stuff about his wife selling her stuff right before and how he, it stuck. It stuck with people with them. So the one thing that the Republicans have on Jeff Jackson, and if you stayed this long, you will remember this. And this actually benefits Jeff Jackson because he needs to, if he can address this now, it won't be a surprise in the main election. Dan McCready back in 2015 or 2016, maybe it was 2015. If you guys remember, there was a bill that was passed that banned windmills on the coast of North Carolina, and it banned windmills because they said it interfered with military planes that came into Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg said that's not true. It was just they just didn't want the reason they wanted to ban windmills was because there was so much lobbying from the solar industry, which was Dan McCready's industry at the time, to pass this bill that would exclude windmills. 2 days before the election, Dan McCready had never donated to Republican again, donated to 2 of the top Republicans that wrote the bill. And the bill passed with Democrats that also voted, and Dan McCready donated to those Democrats. That bill put a moratorium on windmills until I believe it was last year.
Yep.
Governor Cooper is now trying to promote windmills, wind energy. So
actually, we've already gotten into the agreement with 2 other states.
Yes,
so we're
yes.
in a PAC agreement with Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina to develop this windmill project.
So this is what they have on Jeff Jackson. Jeff Jackson was one of those persons who voted for that bill that stopped windmill production and gave solar industry lobbyists the sole reign in North Carolina, which was Dan McCready's industry at the time. So if they will connect Jeff Jackson with Cal Cunningham, with which won't stick, but they will connect him with Dan McCready. He's the same old kind of guy like Dan McCready, and was just in it for himself because Jeff Jackson won't be able to talk about climate when he voted against windmills. Because he basically, what he's saying is, I believe in renewable energy. I just want solar energy to rule and not wind energy or hydro energy. And so that is something that the Republicans have on Jeff Jackson that they hope he wins the primary because he will be easier to beat. First of all, any Trump Republican will be able to beat Jeff Jackson. Erica Smith has been vetted There's nothing scandalous. They've already tried to talk about she was being sued by a school because someone, her old school that she was teaching at, and she's addressed it. She's been addressing all of the dirt that you could pull up on Erica Smith. She did that through Cal Cunningham, and she's doing it now early. And so they don't want Erica Smith to, because what do you have on Erica Smith other than she's a socialist? I mean, that's what they're going to call her, right? But and so that is, if you stayed long enough for this show, those are the two things that you heard. And we will see who stayed long enough for this show, because they will say, did you hear that Christian said that Matthew Ridenhour is switching to unaffiliated, is going to run an unaffiliated? Watch it. And then, did you say that Christian said that what they have against Jeff Jackson is this? Look into it. And the reason I'm saying that was because we dug that dirt up in 2017, and we tried to use it against Dan McCready. We posted his donations. We used the hashtag Windmillgate. So look up hashtag Windmillgate. It didn't stick. I was enthralled in. He was outraised. He raised like $1 million in the first, just like Jeff Jackson. He had this big fundraiser. None of it stick. We didn't have the ability to get nasty enough. We didn't know how to really stick it.
So next on Wired and Tired and Two Queers in a Truck, we'll talk about in the marathon edition.
So if you've stayed long enough, those are two hints. And the reason I'm saying that was because I tried to warn people in 2018 that is what they had on Dan McCready. And people thought when I said it, I was just being a sour grape, that I didn't like Dan McCready. I was upset because he beat me. No, I was telling you because that's what they have on Dan McCready.
You probably were a sour grape.
Oh, yeah, I was.
But they're not mutually exclusive, but you weren't wrong about the other stuff either.
Yes.
But, you basically were a Nostradamus of your time, but I will say that's interesting about Matthew Ridenhour, and so, I think it's one of these things I don't know how when we have 5 or 6 or 7 guests, we wrap it up in an hour. And with the 3 of us, we've gone 2+ hours. What does that say about us 3?
We're masochists and gluttons for punishment.
No,
well, that is true.
That we would be at a sports bar all night long.
We'll have to change this from the coffee name to 3
Cocktails.
people. 3. We'll call it the early cocktail hour or something like that. I mean, like bring some drinks.
I've switched to Irish coffee, guys.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is 5 o'clock somewhere. I think in Great Britain it's 5 o'clock.
So I'm not sure anyone would be watching this late if they watched it now.
They'd also be sadists and masochists here.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and
you made it to this point.
But there are people that scan this show on YouTube and just scan it to see, if there's something that we said or whatever the case may be. And then I'll hear it like 2 weeks later, so because, I can tell when people do things like that. And so I just wanted to plant those two things, because the Matthew Ridenhour thing I know is actually occurring, and I applaud him. I'm so excited that he's actually going to be doing that. But the Jeff Jackson thing, I don't think a lot of people, and I know he knows it. I mean, he has to. You can't raise $1.something million and not have a opposition research team. He knows that's what they're going to be doing, and they've already know what they're going to be running against him. And
so, if we go ahead and
analyze
analyze the Jeff Jackson campaign, we can go all the way to 1 o'clock too.
That's right. And so
I'll say this for the one person still watching.
Yes,
really important.
Yes.
Democrats and Republicans are trash. Vote for the Libertarian candidate. Shannon Bray.
And I'm going to say
pro individual rights.
He's probably the one
pro green energy.
That's right.
He's all about windmills, solar panel, anything you want. And hey, you live your life the way you want to live.
Yeah. And if you donate now, you get a complimentary tinfoil hat with your initials on it.
That's right. And so there's
not only that, but you also get one of these beautiful yellow flowers.
Oh, wow.
Yellow is the color of the Libertarian Party. So
I didn't know that.
So we've had we've had a wonderful show. This has really just been a dialogue after the first hour. And this is like CNN when breaking news is coming on and they're just trying to like, fill the space.
Fill time.
Yeah. And so, listen, I really do miss talking to y'all in person. This has been a great conversation. We talked about cancel culture briefly, and we talked about many other things. Does anybody want to say anything else before we close up? Because we do have to eventually end this show.
I am going to say where I'm going to be tonight.
Yes,
the National Organization of Women. Our meeting starts at 6:30 tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Tune in on Facebook Live on our Facebook page. We do have a educator on, and I'm blanking on her name, which is shameful, but it's going to be a fabulous now presentation about local schools and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a little different than what we've promoted before, and we're excited to have our guest speaker tonight.
I guess we're wrapping up, so go ahead, Stephen.
Oh yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing tonight. I got some errands and stuff I'm gonna run. I'm probably gonna eat something.
Yeah.
That's all.
Our speaker is Amanda Thompson Rice. I blanked on her name. She's an educator, parent, community advocate for strong students, strong schools, and strong communities. And the theme of the show is creating strong schools, the who, what, and how to do it. So it'll start at 6:30 on Zoom, via Facebook, and we're excited to have her. And a shout out to Courtney. She's the one that recruited her because she's a teacher here in the local school system. It's also a board member. So thank you, Courtney.
Well, we will know who stayed and watched this long because they will say, did you hear what they, so, that's the great thing about, being able to plant these little seeds. And so anywho, thank you so much for joining us on Coffee and Budget. If you watch this entire show, I applaud you. Hopefully you'll watch it in segments later on YouTube as well. It was a great conversation. It was just great talking to y'all. I think it's probably more amplified how much we miss each other. And I know Mama Ruth had mentioned last week, when are we getting back together again? We'll have to have that conversation off camera. I'm
we don't have time for that.
Yeah, I'm getting my second shot tomorrow, but I
can't wait to hang out with all of you.
So
I'm perfectly healthy. I want to hang out.
So we went to
Sorry,
church.
wrong tube.
No, we went to church on Sunday, and everyone has to wear masks at service, and they still practice everything that they need to practice. And when we were leaving the service, there was a person that did not have a mask on and attempted to shake someone's hand, and they said, well, "Let's just fist bump." And he goes, and the person said, "Oh, I've gotten all my shots, and this is this." And it's a church. I wanted to. That's not how it works. You still have, even after you get all your shots, you still have to practice safety, because we're not exactly sure if some of it will be in your nose. I mean, the likelihood is probably not as much before, but I just thought that was very interesting when Stephen did that, because I do think that we are going to start to see that over the summer, is people who say, I've got all my shots, everything should be good. And who knows, they might be good. They might be, everything might be good, but because we don't actually know, we're still going to have people that are a little bit concerned because we don't have all the data.
I'm optimistic though.
Oh, I'm optimistic as well. I mean, I'm very optimistic. I mean, I think that after I get this second shot and I do my 2 weeks, whatever, I'm going to go to the sports bar, and I'm going to have a drink, and I will be isolated in a corner with a mask on, with Jenny's invention with the tube. Remember that invention, Jenny, that we talked about?
Yeah, we missed that opportunity, I think.
Well, Christian, I can't wait. I mean, if you need Zoom buddy while you get a white girl wasted, count me in.
And by the end of that sports bar night, I'm going to be going, you don't know me, you don't know. It'll be back to the old days. So anywho,
that's true.
Yeah. So
I want to past.
Exactly.
That's a whole different episode too.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us on Coffee and Dulce. Join us next week when our topic is why lazy Americans are afraid of border kids. Another interesting topic that we will have a heck of a time talking about. So if you're on this call, stay so we can do the promo.
And the cool thing is, the next week's show starts in an hour. So we'll see you in an hour.
So stay on the call. Thank you for joining us on Coffee and Dulce. For those who will be watching this later, let me play the music. Oh, let's play the music.
Technology is my friend.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all. We really mean it this time.